Morning, everybody. We are here yet again for another episode of Leaders Connect, um, an initiative by Arka Leadership. Arka Leadership is a movement to inspire people to live with authenticity. It is a collaboration of senior HR leaders, professional coaches who have experienced and are passionate about living with authenticity. The movement has been started by Ashu Khanna, a chartered accountant who has now been leading this movement and developing leaders to live life authentically. This movement actually has been inspired through her journey of transformation of the last 15 years. For an organization so young, we are really fortunate and grateful to have a partnership with TOSB and other premier organizations as our outreach partners. TOSB is an online platform with leading experts offering cutting-edge perspectives and learning from their fields. The platform partners with global speakers and experts to facilitate conversations on the most pressing concerns and possibilities of the current world on topics ranging from storytelling to boardroom philosophies. Now, what exactly is Leaders Connect and why do we need it so much? I firmly believe that there is so much goodness in the world, and somewhere I think we lose sight of that in ourselves and in the world out there. When we trust our instinct and we really live with it, we are able to rediscover, reconnect, and rediscover the infinite possibilities that exist in the world. The whole vision to inspire and empower the world to harness and unleash this treasure by sharing stories and having dialogues with some of the most inspiring leaders is what we hope to achieve, aspire and achieve through Leaders Connect. It's a series of online dialogues with some of the most inspiring leaders from different walks of life, like sports, technology, media, healthcare, marketing, and more. We deep dive into one essential, all-important quality of successful transformation leadership that defines the leadership style of the leaders in these conversations. The series aims to build dialogue around qualities such as authenticity, emotional intelligence, courage, faith, trust, compassion, and more. Our outreach partners for this event are Beyond Diversity. It is a global think tank focusing on diversity and inclusion. They collaborate with institutions and leaders to create inclusive workplaces via consulting, mentoring, and creating awareness. Through long-term cultural change and sustainable programs, they impact leaders, communities, businesses to be inclusive in growth and innovation. Since 2011, they have supported more than 100 organizations across the region and impacted more than 1 lakh leaders to promote inclusive leadership. On that note, I would like to welcome our speaker today, Mr. Annaswamy Vedahish. Mr. Vedahish is a successful senior business leader with over 3 decades of diverse experience in the healthcare and FMCG domain. Former MD and VP, Asia Pacific for GlaxoSmithKline Pharma, and before that, Johnson & Johnson. He has a strong track record of leadership development and building leading brands, franchises across various categories and multicultural locations. Presently, a senior advisor in life sciences to global private equity fund PAG Hong Kong for investments in India, an advisor to Set Connect Advisors USA and senior mentor for Master Union India. He has also been the president of Organization of Pharmaceutical Producers Association of India from 2017 to 20. Thank you so much, Vedish, for being with us today. And we really look forward to a very insightful and deep conversation. And more than anything, a very inspiring, invigorating conversation, because the topic, living in possibilities, a strategic tool itself, creates a lot of intrigue and excitement in me. So on that note, I would really like to ask you, what does living in possibilities mean to you?
Ashu, first and foremost, is the voice clear?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you. So, first and foremost, thank you very much for getting me on your platform. I think you and your team has been doing a fantastic job of creating such platform, bringing various kinds of leaders, and I've heard quite a lot about what you have done. So, so first and foremost, uh, I'm a great fan of lateral thinking of Edward de Bono. Many years back, how I started off and the early part of my career. Um, the one of the biggest problem that we face as a society is our limiting beliefs about what is right and wrong. And when I went through a program by Edward de Bono, it is so many years back, and it really opened up my eyes on the concept of how possibilities exist all around you, right? And very interestingly, the humor is the best form of lateral thinking. So whenever I find somebody is having a good sense of humor, I always find they're the biggest strategic people in the world. Not from any of the jokes apart, the pun intended, but the fact of the matter is, I think people can think very differently, which makes you to think, you never think that that's going to be the end when some joke is being made and you burst into laughter. As they say, uh, humor is no longer a humor once it is said, because the logic is vertical. Uh, there's no longer humor, but the logic is uh, by foresight. You can't see it, but hindsight you can see. That's humor, right? So many of the possibilities that we talk about, it exists in different forms. The unfortunate part is that there are a lot of set of boring people in our world. They see they see a vertical logic, and we all get cowed down by conversation which moves around this logic of what somebody has said, who said, and what is said, and we rally around the bosses. And we all end up in doing some mediocre job, right? Not from any other perspective, it's just that that's the way the world operates. It never encourages people to look at lateral possibilities. So one of the things that I always felt, uh, there are two logic that is there. One is the water logic, another tabletop logic. Uh, the water logic is the one where when the water first drops on a sea of sand and it forms a rivulet and then goes into the river. And every time the water drops, and it actually drops into the rivulet and then it goes into the river and then goes into the sea. That's what most of our life is all about, right? It's all about water logic. Just because somebody has said in a company, this is how it should be done, and that's the way it should be done. The tabletop logic is that when a marble is put on the table, and every time you drop the marble, every time it goes in different directions. That, in my opinion, is the possibilities of life. So, the day when organization recognizes willing to listen and understand, uh, as an individual, life is full of possibilities. Organization has to think and recognize that tabletop logic is the way to go, because you don't know who is going to come and disrupt your business. Unless otherwise, you as an organization have not prepared yourself for the tabletop logic to play out in your business. So that's what I call it as a living in possibilities, and it is a strategic tool.
That thank you for that. That was very it's very different start, I would say. So very rarely do people start on the note of humor, and I think that itself sets the tone for a conversation that says, It's an art, and it's clearly, agree with you, it's something that doesn't exist. I think we get too serious, too caught up in the issues and the problems rather than looking at that life is ultimately a joke being played out on us. And we are so trapped in that concept called life, rather than looking at it as a joke being played out on us, we forget to enjoy the whole play of it. Uh, you mentioned the word listening, that because ultimately when it's tabletop logic, it's really ultimately it all boils down to listening, what's occurring there. Was it something that always that art existed in you? Did you cultivate it? If you could shed a little light on that.
No, like many other executives, and all of us start our career for economic freedom, right? If nobody starts, and at least at the age when we started out, maybe in the younger generation may have a different framework. At the time when we all started, our life is all about economic freedom, right? So if you can get a salary and figure out a job that can get you to next stage of life. So at that stage of life, it's all about making sure that you don't lose your job, and make sure that you act very intelligent, so that people think that you're fit enough to be in the job. At a point of time, fortunately, I had some bosses. I I really, at various point of time, I keep remembering them. I send a thank you note to them. Um, I'm of the opinion that there's a very interesting saying that uh, Zen master saying that the teacher will appear when the student is ready, right? So I find it interesting that I did find my teacher in my bosses who brought in this whole concept of listening. When I was in a consumer business, in consumer business, before in healthcare, and also, of course, even in healthcare, but in the consumer business, it's all about listening to your consumers. And my boss used to insist on me sitting in behind what they call the one-way mirror. I don't know whether it's still available or not. Those days, you sit behind a one-way mirror and listen to your consumers and a focus group discussions. I used to manage a skincare business, feminine hygiene, baby products, and uh, the whole idea was to listen to consumers. Very interestingly, that brought in a sense of suddenly you realize when you listen to people uh, and then start connecting dots, and suddenly you get insights. And particularly in the consumer business, is all about getting insights. Like the magic bullet is in getting that 30 seconds commercial that we used to make, and that has to tell everything what a consumer wants. So obviously your segmentation, positioning, all the stuff happens. But if you don't get your magic bullet of what a consumer is thinking, that discipline made me to believe that listening is such an important that I cultivated in every aspect of my corporate life, whether it's listening to employees. I used to be so diligent when I'm sitting in my management board meeting or employees meeting, and 1,000 people congregation, I'm listening to somebody saying. The question is here is that listening to understand rather than listening to respond. It's a very big lesson that I learned. Um Most of the time, we as the leaders, we're all trying to listen so that we respond very smartly, so that people think that you're an intelligent boss. Versus listening to understand where the person is coming from and recognizing uh, the position the person is coming from, And similarly, the consumer, where they're coming from, why are they saying what they are saying? That opens up possibilities of conversation, possibilities of new opportunities. It's a brilliant mosaic that opens up. In fact, I used to be a pain for many of my employees because I open up lots of mosaic of possibilities, which people think that you are creating too much work for us. So,
on a lighter note, I'd love to know if the same discipline exists at home with Saraswati and your daughter or there or not.
well, they don't like it anyway. So that, that that's too demanding. But I, I guess I enjoy the world is full of possibilities, right? We so get caught up with when you're listening to music. Why do you need to listen to one kind of music, right? There's some possibilities of music out there. People say, what kind of music you like? Why do you need to get stuck with one kind of music, right? So the cutting to chase, I think life is full of possibilities. I think we need to develop our bandwidth. Each one of us, right from early stage of life, rather than limiting ourselves to one way of living, to living with possibilities. I enjoy every piece of it. That's where I get my energy and where I get the excitement.
So thank you for that. Now, developing our bandwidth is obviously, like you mentioned, a discipline and art. It's a cultivated skill. How would you advise people in, whether it's individual level or organizational or the youth to actually develop that skill and attitude?
No, Ashu, I don't know whether I have explained to you before. I know it's a big concept, but it takes more time. But I'm going to try to um, bring it to as simple as possible. Um, First and foremost, I think we need to stop taking ourselves seriously. Yeah. So I'm not saying it as a making a fun of what we do, but I think the starting point is um, the day when we recognize uh, we are the cause of things that's happening around us. The recognition of the fact that we are not constantly trying to figure out how do I blame things around us and externalizing all issues. Instead, that we we have the power to make things happen around us. I think that's a basis of all the conversation that happens, right? If you don't get that, it's very difficult to live in possibilities. So first and foremost, baseline, what I sometimes, I don't know, it takes maybe what sessions to make that person to believe. First and foremost, we need to recognize the fact that stop whining, stop being a victim of things around you. And second is that we need to recognize the fact you are the cause of what's happening around. Now, this might sound big. Now, I'm not talking about wanting to Mahatma Gandhi or a Nelson Mandela, but the fact each one of us in our own life, uh, we have to recognize that we are the cause, whatever is happening around you, and the word that we give as a value. Uh, the the conversation that we have, that we need to start respecting who we are. And when I say 10 o'clock, it should be 10 o'clock, right? So that means there's a power that we give it to ourselves. And so start, and after that, I think the possibilities is endless because you become the cause. Now, you got to choose those possibilities. And I'm going to give a quick synopsis of strategic tool. One of the definitions that I really pursue is the concept of decide. The word decide is a interesting word, like fungicide, homicide, and pesticide. Each one of them, pesticide is killing pests, fungicide is killing fungus, homicide is killing oneself, and decide is killing alternatives. So when you do a strategic choice of all possibilities, when you say I took a good decision, that means you killed good set of alternatives before you came to a particular decision. That means you have to create possibilities before you say that I've come to a conclusion that this is a choice that make. That's why when you say strategy is a choice that you make out of various possibilities that you create. When somebody says I took a decision of a two choice, is no big decision. How many possibilities that you created and how many of them you killed before you come to the decision, given the time limit and all the stuff, right? So I'm of the opinion that we all need to, if I have to give a suggestion to people, first thing is that um, remember, don't be in a hurry to come to a conclusion unless otherwise there's an emergency where decision is to, if there's a fire, you have to jump, right? Now, I'm not talking about emergency situation or a critical situation, but if you have sufficient time, find out what it takes to create possibilities. Think through various techniques. You know, Edward Debano has created a lot of techniques, like a random entry technique, and a lot of techniques are available for you to create enough possibilities and then start evaluating each possibilities, cut them out and say related to where you want to go. This is the decision that you took, and take ownership of the decision and move forward. And then given a time, and then there's an expiry for every idea, every possibility. And then you, what I call the convergence and divergence. First, you need to diverge, converge, move around, then diverge and converge like an eagle or a butterfly.
That imagery of an eagle and a butterfly actually creates a very strong visual of an explorer, someone who's willing to dare, someone who's willing to soar, and actually take an overview before taking a nesting in on one thought. So that's absolutely a fabulous thing. So how has your team responded to this concept? When you, obviously it's something that you imbibe and are passionate about. Have you seen challenges and any stories of when you found it to be the most successful way of doing something, or when you found it the most challenging way of actually bringing it about?
Yeah, but one of the biggest thing that you will, if as an organization, right? If you are to lead an organization, the other one is an individual, right? Then lead an organization. Uh, Whatever you do, create a possibility. It's not about you. So I follow this Micade's model of 4E model of envisioning, empowering, energizing, enabling, and energizing model. It's a very, very powerful model where I've always found if people don't see what you are seeing, there is no way the possibility is going to get life. So one of my effort in when I ran a company is to make sure the vision has to be shared. The vision, shared vision, is a very important aspect of going after a possibility. Now, if you're not going to, if I have 1,000 people working under me and each one of them don't understand what is this vision is all about. If I'm planning to go to Mount Everest, I'm asking people to join me in the Mount Everest. They need to know the excitement as much as what I have. They need to have their excitement. So that possibility cannot be remain with you. So one of the exercises I do is enrollment. Enrollment of your organization onto your vision. And if they are not empowered to go after the end vision, nothing is going to happen. People are going to say, yeah, I understand, but I'm not empowered to do that. Many of the organizations, the leaders sit there and keep giving gyan, but the people below don't have what it takes to execute. So first thing is to do is to empower. example is Mahatma Gandhi or Genghis Khan. There are a lot of stories out there. And third is that enabling. You got to enable people. You can't be having somebody to fight a war on the high mountains, and if they don't have a boot but they have a canvas shoe, they are not going to fight in big icy mountains. The last one is energizing people. So you got to keep energizing people, giving rewards and incentives to keep them motivated. So the best example is that I remember when I wanted to drive a obesity procedure, one of the surgical procedure business, people felt that there are no obese people in this country. And this is almost about 15, 16 years back. And I said, no, there are obese people who want solution. They are sitting at home. You don't see them in the malls, right? And it was zero procedures. Today is more than 15,000 people have got surgery done. And similarly, when I was talking about in 1993, Carefree Panty Shields we are selling about, when I was in Indonesia, it was only 8 million pants, 8 million pads, and 1998 it was 100 million pads. It's just the fact empowering the women out there to know the meaning of what it takes to take care of the feminine hygiene habits without getting into the details of it. But very important thing for us to understand is that envisioning people and help them understand. At the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not about whom you serve, right? If you don't get to understand them, uh, if you don't solve the problems, whether you are a servant, right? I call that a servant leadership. If you're running an organization, if you're not a servant to your employees, you are not a servant to your customers, you are not a servant to your consumers, you're not going to win. Don't expect people to come and tell you what is right. No, you got to help them, saying that you tell me what is right, I'll help you to solve the problem. So I think that's an approach that when you take, it's a what I call enlightened self-interest, for a lack of a better word. If they do well, you do well too. But it's not the reverse, right? Everybody is trying to suck up to you, saying that, oh, you're a great boss. It's of no use. It's not solving the problem, right? Instead, you go there and solve the problem, being in the front, and solve the consumer problem. If they have a problem, attend to it quickly, right? Similarly, attend to your employees at the grassroots. Then you have a greater success to deliver.
You mentioned servant leadership. Serving, it is more about getting yourself out of the way and being very focused on whether it's the team, the customer, the problem, and not being completely embroiled on this whole concept of yourself. Now, that requires a person to be very, very clear and honed in on the purpose. And today, if you look at, what COVID has done is brought out this whole concept of lead with purpose and even more into our faces than ever before. Now, here is where many people feel there's a dichotomy here, is that if I focus on purpose, will I have a compromise on profit? What do you think about balancing or really working through those?
No, Ashu, it's a great point. So I talk about this concept called balancing between Jan Kalyan versus profit maximization. Okay, so and more so in healthcare, it comes out very strongly, because typically in healthcare, the Jan Kalyan takes a very higher position, because that's how traditionally healthcare has been viewed in the world by the charity organization. The organization like Christian institutions or the Hindu institution, religious institution. Earlier days, the healthcare has always been driven by people who thought healthcare is God's uh, uh, way of telling you to serve the people, right? It's a very revered subject. The unfortunate part is that, a point of time, um, people are living in 1947 when we gained independence and our average longevity was 47. Today, average longevity is 72. Now we are across 70s. Now healthcare has changed, right? Well, now you're living longer. The living longer is due to various people who have come in, the different ecosystem, members of the ecosystem have come in and making that happen. Whether it is the pharma company, whether it is the providers, payers who come into the system, and physicians, playmakers in the system. Now, the question here is that, yes, you need to have the same reverence to the healthcare. You want people to live longer with less morbidity or no morbidity. But however, there is a pay attached to it. There's a payment attached to it. There is a profit. There has to be people who are interested in making that happen. So now the question is, on one end, you have Jan Kalyan, which is the public good. The other end is a profit maximization. And the question is, how do you balance these two? How do I bring it to the middle? What I call the profit optimization with public good in your mind. Now, that is exactly the point that happened in COVID. If you look at COVID, now uh, it's a pandemic. There's a convergence, the global convergence on figuring out we don't die, the planet doesn't disappear because of a virus, and everybody putting their resources to make sure that people are out of the woods. The question is it sustainable if you don't support? Now, every members in the ecosystem are putting their money. Like, for example, I saw, you must have heard uh, Serum Institute saying that I am putting money at risk. Some 400 crores, 500 crores, they are putting money at risk. I think it's a great leadership that they are saying, I'm willing to put money to get a vaccine at risk. Now, no government, nobody has said that we are going to underwrite your risk. But they thought it's a great risk. So a businessman is putting his money and saying that I'm going to come up with a vaccine, or I'm going to create a manufacturing site if Oxford vaccine comes into play. Similarly, Bharat Biotech has done the same thing, along with ICMR. Similarly, various other people. The question is, at the point of time, if a society doesn't reciprocate um, people who are taking risk in solving your social problem, you are not likely to get more people in future to come and do exactly what these people have done. So, in my opinion, uh, the the concept of syndicated risk, somebody need to help people uh, to solve the problem with the scientific community, take it to go to market, make sure that everybody in the country gets a vaccine or drugs. Now there's a money involved, sustainability involved. So rather than saying people are making profits, instead we should say, how do I make sure that you guys make decent profit, but making sure society is taken care. Till that time, you don't make that happen. There is no incentive for society to come up with a solution to solve future pandemic. So I'm of the opinion is that we need to celebrate people who take a risk, who took a chance and put their money in place. At the end of the day, businessmen put money for gain because all of them are greenbacks or whatever the color that you say. Uh, we need to recognize them for having what they did. At the same time, nobody should profiting or profiteering. If anybody is profiteering and making a fool of people, I think they need to condemn. We need to condemn them. But anybody who is genuinely making a difference and we need to make sure that they are sustained. That's my principle of how do you, particularly in the healthcare space.
So it's actually acknowledging that, Zach, thanks for that. That explanation was very helpful because what you are really, that Profit is doing is acknowledging the initiative and the courage of a leader or an institution to step forward and stick their neck out in a scenario where there is no, they're serving society, the outcomes are obviously unknown, and yet the benefits are tremendous to the world at large. So that gives a very clear perspective. And you mentor a lot of people as well. What qualities do you think are important in a mentor and a mentee?
See, the first and foremost, I think I'm of the opinion mentor is the one who should be a facilitator. Um, I don't think a mentor should not be a subject matter expert. I think he or she should be a good mirror, a reflection of the person uh, who has some issues or a challenge. And the mentee's job, because many times what happens is that when you said mentee, I could be a mentee, you could be a mentee for a particular situation. It's all contextual, right? Um, mentee need not necessarily be a young kid. Mentee could be a aged person too. Mentee means a person who has a challenge on a particular context where they are not able to resolve an issue, and they are struggling because they are not able to. They don't have one is adequate bandwidth, or a situation is preventing them from rather having their blinkers to make sure they're not able to see options. How do they resolve challenge that they're faced with? So the mentor's job is to reflect and listen to the mentee and understand what they want to do, what are they trying to resolve, what challenges that they have, and to make sure that first and foremost crystallize the issue itself. Many times the mentees that I've had, I've always found that they have not even crystallized their issue. And many times the issue is so simple, but they cloud the issue with so much of peripherals, and which prevent them from looking at the real issue. The real issue is such a simple issue, right? So the mentor's job is to help them to peel the onions and give a reflection and make them to understand the issue itself. Once the issue is very clear, frankly, in my opinion, the mentees find a solution. You don't even need to find a solution. The people are so caught up in not able to figure out. I always ask the question, "आप क्या करना चाहते हो?" A simple question, right? And that itself, then you keep asking this question. So, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Right? Suddenly, they realize that it's so simple. So, the answer is just getting the problem defined very clearly. So, the biggest expectation of a mentor is to help a mentee to identify the problem of the context that they are in. I think that itself will open up lots of solutions.
It's really comes back to what Simon Sinek also says, the why. Keep coming back to why. Why do I want to do it? Why do I want to do it? And when you keep delayering, and actually, I think we make, very rightly said, we make complicate life. Life is very simple. It all comes down to that bottom point of why am I wanting to do it and what do I want most of? Once we have clarity on that, the fog just disappears.
Absolutely.
Totally. I have a question here from Spriha. What, according to you, is the most important mindset issue that millennials are having to deal with?
Yeah, well, in you know, it's a very broad question, but I try my level best because the so-called millennial. I have a couple of views on so-called millennial. Um, I'm just thinking what the right way to express this. Uh, the period that we came from, uh, where we got to make our mark in life, uh, from an economics perspective, right? Many of our generation, just country got independence, and economy was growing at 3 and 4%, and where I paid 11 rupees for my school, 250 rupees for my college, and 2,500 rupees for my MBA, right? So that's the kind of we came from. Uh, the sense of entitlement was not there in our uh, time of life. Means for us, everything is all about I got to work and make my way through to get what I need. Now, uh, including my child or whatever, I think we're fortunate. The millennials are so fortunate that I'm talking about large portion of millennials. There are some people who may not be fortunate. They have a great head start where the families have provided the millennials a platform for them to look at uh, not the basics of life, but the next stage of life. The mindset of millennials should be to do um, what can I contribute, what can I do differently, and what mark that I can give uh, in this world, right? The unfortunate part is the entitlement mentality has crept in so much in millennial. They are only talking about themselves. And I'm not, again, I want to be careful about. Your future is so brilliant and full of possibilities. I think if you ask me, I could never think of possibilities in my life because of my possibilities were very, very simple when I started my career. It's all about when is my next increment going from 2,500 rupees to 2,600 rupees, right? So, because we are so bound by certain aspects of life, I think the millennial should pursue, in my opinion, is their passion and what they're good at. And their mindset should not be the fact that I don't have what it takes to do it. In my opinion, they have everything available to pursue passion and what they are good at it. And what it requires is a commitment to make that happen, make the shift. The blessed population is a millennial. I wish that I was in the millennial where I could have done much bigger than what I have done in my life. The millennial is a fantastic stage of century of our life. Your possibilities are immense. You know, I keep seeing all kinds of stuff is happening in this world. So make a mark, take it and run, and create an excellence in the pathway that you have. So I, I think they're all sitting on possibilities.
I totally agree. Vedish, if there's one thing I discovered over the last, my own journey of change is that at some point, and it's not just a sense of entitlement, but a complacency sets in. You get so spoiled by everything that's provided for, you just expect life to work for you till it shakes you up. And I think, in a way, much as we may, I do empathize with those who are truly suffering in the COVID, but I think it's been a big wake up call from the complacency many are sitting on, that we really have the gift of free will and intellect to really work through and generate possibilities for ourselves.
Absolutely.
I have another question here from Danish. How can you find your why? Is there a framework?
No, it's a very, very, uh, very important and very philosophical question. I don't know. I can give you a simple answer, but I'll try to give you an example. Probably that will help Danish to relate with that. Um, when I started my career, like many of you at the early stage of life, I was in a industry without having to demean the industry that I was in. I was in the liquor industry. Um, the big man, I'm not going to name, and I was part of that in way back in 1983, 84. But I was not, um, though it's a very glamorous, I, I was making good, decent money at that stage of life. Something that I was not happy in what I was doing. But when my boss happened to meet me at some point of time, and he told me to come to healthcare industry. At that time, when you said healthcare industry, it's all government hospitals and going and doing business in a dirty government hospitals, right? And from glamorous to non-glamorous, right? So when I made the shift, and I felt that there is a inner calling. I felt that when I go to the hospitals, I was in infection control business. I was a product manager, and I felt very interesting. Attended a bypass surgery, went for a training and all those stuff. I didn't have a clue as to what it's all about. But when I started spending time, I suddenly realized that maybe this is the industry I should be in. It's not glamorous. Not many friends. In the earlier business, there are many friends for me. But here, you go there and you know very well there's a lot of suffering people, and you go. So and after that, I spent now so many years in healthcare, and I never turned back. I felt so happy about seeing making a difference, and my get salary get paid, and you are dealing with the right people and all the stuff. So one of the things that my recommendation is that why, there's something called to have, to be, and being. Uh, you got to explore this phase for yourself. The being piece, um, you got to ask this question: is this something where I get maximum happiness? There's an exercise I do to my mentees, 17 to 18 question that I do about the purpose in life. It's very important that I suggest uh, each one of us uh, explore where do you get the maximum happiness in life. Retrospect, think about which are the moments that you got the maximum impact. There is some meaning in it, there is some connection in it, and I don't know when you will get the connect. I'm not going to demean which industry, what people are doing, but there's something which will make you feel that this is what I want to do. This is my happiness that I get. Correct. So that is the being, is where there's what they call it in Chinese they call it chi, or flow. Suddenly your energy start flowing. You become, so you are in the being stage. You start flowing, and you enjoy. You dance, right? You dance in that space. So I don't know what it is for each one, uh, but you got to keep pushing that line to see when you get your chi or energy that's flowing in which aspect, and don't miss it. Capture it and see that is there anything that I can do in my life. Now, obviously, you need some people to help you out in making that happen. That's where I got that feeling, high energy in healthcare, where I felt when a patients are coming out of the bypass surgery, relatives waiting there and they're all feeling happy, and you are along with the cart being wheeled out and you're standing there. I felt very good. Oh my God, this is not like FMCG, right? Your brand is doing well. Yeah, great idea. But here I'm seeing, so it's about, I leave it to you, right? I've explained.
Yeah, so it's really about what gives you joy and unleashes that energy in a person. I have a question from anonymous. It's I don't have the name here. Is there a way to identify one's own blind spot?
Yeah, I think um, it's a very, very important question. You know, the only way you can get your blind spot checked, if you're working for a company, or if you're young enough, you have enough people, best thing is feedback. The best thing is to get feedback. Like for example, in the companies where I work, we have something called 360 degrees feedback. And 360 degrees feedback, anonymous, and many times it tells you exactly your blind spots, and you feel dejected because you think, no, 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 that's not me. People are telling you, you know what, you are an idiot, right, on blah blah blah, but you want to say, no, no, I'm not. So question is, uh, wanting to understand a blind spot. First and foremost, you need to be ready to receive feedback about your blind spot. It's not easy. Let me tell you, the reason why it's a blind spot is that many times we deliberately decide not to look at that space. And my belief is that I think we all know our blind spot. It's just that we deliberately prevent ourselves from not wanting to know it. But from practical perspective, get to hear from people and don't be judgmental. Listen to what people are saying. And if they are saying you are behaving like this, now what you need to do is that absorb it and see what I can do to figure this out. The blind spot is something we deliberately avoid. So Ashu, you know it better. So
I, yeah, it is living in denial. I would put it as simple as I think we live in denial till the world holds the mirror in front of us. I have a question from Dr. Pramod Solanki. In the efficiency driven culture of corporates, how easy was it for you to practice exploring alternatives and then deciding to act at various stages of your career?
yeah, so I, you know, your point is valid. Every company is talking about efficiency. See, at the end of the day, you have to remember one thing. Uh, you are not exploring alternatives in isolation. You are exploring alternatives um, for the company's benefit, right? If you are going to explore alternatives in isolation, not you are not going to get too much support. You're not. If you come back and say, as I always tell people, working in an organization is like performing surgery on a beating heart. Like, I don't know whether many of you may not know, it's called a beating heart surgery. While the heart is beating, you do a surgery in bypass surgery, right? Not a bypass, or you remove the saphenous vein and apply a vein on your heart. You can't afford to let the heart stop. So in an organization, corporate life, whether you like it or not, the corporate life has to beat. It has to produce profits. It has to deliver results. So let's not uh, uh, say that making profits or delivering quarterly results is bad, because that's the purpose of an organization. Organization has to deliver certain quarterly expectation of the investors, right? Now your job is to add value to this process by making sure that you are not talking something uh, which is out of the blue, which is going to take away the interest of the organization. So, and this is where I call it as maturity has to come in. You are not living in isolation. Uh, I have done so many things where I have done first and foremost for deliver what you are expected to deliver in the organization. While having done that, now pursue your alternatives. So there is no scope for somebody to say, I am pursuing alternatives, but I'm not going to deliver what is expected of me. That's not acceptable in a corporate world. That's the unfortunate part. And very interestingly, the day once you deliver the results, there are people wanting to listen to your innovation, listen to your advice, listen to your thinking. But if you don't deliver result, nobody wants to listen to you. So it's a it's a very
Bit of a
simple.
catch-22 situation.
Correct.
Alpa Ashar has a question. In my coaching experience, I have observed one thing that people are struggling with is consistently working towards anything. Consistency, how can one develop this virtue?
No, I think it's again a very, very important question. Um, See, when use the word consistency is it's about belief. Um, Consistency for the sake of consistency is not a. You got to look at the context that you are operating in, right? Um, the one which you're talking about is a sustainability is a one piece. Other one is consistency. What people are looking for, like, and I take an example of a performing leader. People want to know: are you a what they call it as a one-trick pony, or you can deliver this on a consistent basis? So, whenever I look at a leader when I am recruiting, I only look for people: have they delivered whatever they have said, whatever they're saying? Have they delivered it on a consistent basis? I mean, is it a flash in the pan, or do they have the enough muscle and skills to deliver that aspects of whatever they are saying? So when you use the word consistency, consistency in relation to ability to deliver a particular aspect of your skill. When somebody says, can you give me an example of delivery of results in your specialty? You should be able to say two cycles of success tells you that you have enough muscle and enough power to have delivered that. Then I know this person has what it takes to deliver this. So consistency as the term, if you use it uh, beyond the framework, just to give an example, is that one of my boss used to say, um, and somebody said, I have a 20 years of experience. He asked the question, do you have a 20 years of 1 year experience repeated 20 times, or a 20 years of experience of having improved? Now, I think that says it all. Consistently, I delivered the 1 year experience 20 times has no meaning in this world, right? So I think I've answered it sufficiently.
So it really comes down to constantly learning and that conviction to keep going.
Absolutely.
So I have another question from Govindan Sridhar. The current pandemic has brought total shakeout of labor market and skills. How do you expect last two and future two generations should do to bring value and integrity?
Well, I think the point that Govind has made is a very important point. Pandemic has definitely changed the landscape. Uh, However, I don't know what life stage this person is in. Uh, so my recommendation to you is, um if I'm in your position, if you're a youth, I think it's going to open up phenomenal possibilities. The most exciting future is beyond COVID. Uh, COVID is a pause. Like many times, what happens in a pandemic is that the whole society figures out how to deal with that, and there will be a solution that will come up. The world is not going to stop. So the first capability I would request you to have is optimism, uh, positivity, and the skills that definitely I believe is new age skill is in the area of digital transformation. I think um, there's so much is happening in the digital space. I don't know which all the areas. I keep hearing about AIs and machine learnings and all those stuff. I think these are all going to change the world. In fact, right now I'm in US. I was listening to a podcast where exactly the question was talked about how the medical facilities are going to change. By the doctor, they're saying, no, all patients are not going to come and meet them. Many of them are going to continue to do the digital consultation. Only the critical people might come in the new world, right? So you are going to see, if you ask me, get yourself into capability into business analytics, digital world. There's so much is happening in this world. Get yourself into that space. And frankly, I don't even know. There are lots of new opportunities are going to come. I think, as Ashu rightly pointed out, this title of this meeting itself is focusing on possibilities, right? As a strategic tool for all of you. I just don't even have a clue, but make sure that you use a tabletop logic. Be ready. The possibilities are going to be so immense. You don't even have a clue. I won't be able to, as an elderly person sitting here, I won't be able to tell you what possibilities are going to come. The possibilities are immense. So I'm more excited for you guys more than for myself.
Very, very well said. I think we are at an inflection point, and the whole of an entrepreneurial revolution, I call it. I think it is going to be, and we are actually moving towards an era of immense innovation and creativity, as you rightly said, Vaidesh. And I think on that extremely optimistic, positive, and note of possibilities, we've already over the hour. It's been, the time has flown by with all this questions and stories. I would like to say thank you very much for a very, very interesting and insightful conversation with covering up, ultimately it is about staying open all the time, staying alert and open, and not being trapped in our own myths and beliefs and paradigms, and just looking at what the world has to offer to us at this point in time, looking into the present and moving into the future unhindered, absolutely. So thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Ashu. I think it's wonderful. I'm very glad that I could share my thoughts, and I'm quite sure that many more questions are out there. And my parting remark to people is, I think the world is full of phenomenal opportunities, more exciting things to come. Pandemic is only a inflection point for many things to happen. So I know that we went through a tough time. We are going through a tough time. I could never imagine vaccine could be developed. I've been in the healthcare industry. I know vaccine. We have sold vaccines. It takes 8 to 9 years. Today, pandemic has created a possibility of vaccine in 8 months' time. So I have a faith in our human ability to come up with solution. The only thing I see is the phenomenal progress and great opportunities. So thanks very much for giving me an opportunity part of this session.